So I interned on the Hill in summer of 2021, and it was a really interesting time to be on the Hill. It was a couple months after January 6th. The fences were still up around the Capitol. And COVID was still, I mean, not that it isn't now, but alive and well in terms of you could really tell political affiliation by whether someone was wearing a mask or not. And most of my job while I was an intern was answering constituent calls. And many of the callers we had called many times a day, 6, 7, 8 times a day. And kind of out of just thinking about all of this play was really born.
From NCPR, welcome to Northwards. People, ideas, and conversations from and about Northern New York, Vermont, and beyond. I'm Mitch Teich.
Support for the Northwards podcast comes from the J.C. Steiniger and M.E. McDonald Charitable Fund at Adirondack Community Foundation in support of the Adirondack Community Foundation, building stronger Adirondack communities.
Now the number 2 light came back on.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's Northwards. Now we know how the microphones work. Actually, we have more questions than we did when we started.
Ethan Shanty is our producer here on Northwards, and he joins us from time to time, those times being before the interviews and after the interviews. I can't remember whether we actually talked about this in interview form or we were just talking about it, but I brought you back a little something from Maine.
Oh, really?
Yes.
The key to Stephen King's mansion.
Yes. Here it is.
Blackjack gum. Oh, my God. Really? Thank you. Oh, and it's fresh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you can smell it through the package.
Bought it at the general store in...
Did the guy say, oh, yeah, you're from the north, huh?
The Granite Hall General Store in Round Pond, Maine.
Wow.
I think I paid 45 cents for that package of blackjack gum.
I have never seen a non-stale package of blackjack gum. Thank you.
Oh, my God. Well, I'm glad I could share this moment with you.
I've never seen it in a store. The only place I've ever seen blackjack gum is in the top drawer of my dad's tool chest. It always breaks and then stabs your gums. Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. I hope it's a chew down memory lane.
My brother is going to be thrilled when he comes into the station later today for a tour.
So another thing that I can't remember, have we talked about jobs in high school before?
We probably have. Never on the mic, though. What was your first job?
Well, I had a couple of weird jobs when I was in high school because I grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C., so I actually interned on Capitol Hill a couple of times.
And what secrets do you still know?
Well, I can tell you that the truth is that some of the speeches given on the floor of the House of Representatives – actually, it probably wasn't in the full House. It was just the speeches given in the Subcommittee on Natural Resources, Agriculture, Research, and the Environment by
You're putting me to sleep already.
Yeah, and I was 16 or 17, and I was writing speeches or drafting speeches for this congressman from someplace in New York, actually, who chaired this committee.
So, an intern? Was writing speeches for the floor?
Well, I like I said, I was drafting speeches.
Well, okay, sure. I mean, they were going over them, but still, I wouldn't expect that it would even begin with an intern.
I wouldn't expect that either today, but back in the day, it didn't seem unusual at all.
Well, could you still smoke on the House floor?
I don't know whether you could smoke on the House floor, but the congressman that I worked for, who chaired this committee, was definitely smoking somewhere.
Back when America was stood for something, you could smoke in Pizza Hut.
So I had a couple of. I actually, when I was 14, I worked for the Colorado Senator Gary Hart when he was running for president.
Okay.
In the press office at his campaign headquarters, which were in what was then a very sketchy part of D.C. And is now a very gentrified part of D.C. that you would not recognize if you had been there in 1984.
And did Mr. Hart blame you and your speeches for his loss?
No, because the catastrophe that he had was in 1988 with the whole monkey business thing, where he was photographed with a model who was not his wife, definitely, on board the yacht. You don't know the story.
I don't know this story.
He was photographed on a yacht called Monkey Business.
Oh, that's the name. Okay,
Yeah,
all right. I
yeah.
see this name for the scandal now. Okay.
He was a real underdog in '84 who surprisingly made it all the way to the convention before he lost to Walter Mondale, who then got, as they say, stomped like a narc at a biker rally in the general election. But it was I actually did a lot of answering of constituent. Well, it wasn't even constituent mail; it was campaign mail, like people who were writing in and sometimes donating money and sometimes asking questions, and had no idea that a 14-year-old high school student was opening the mail and drafting responses and
You
stuff.
had a lot more responsibility than I did at my very first job, which was manning the cash register at a music store. I got the job when I was 16. I'd just gotten my license. The condition for my license was that I had to get a job so that I could pay for my own car insurance and gas, and that job paid me
This is not a condition that the state of New York set.
No, my parents. My parents gave me a car for my 16th birthday, and they said that you have to get a job in order to fund this. We're not going to pay for everything. So I pretty much have only ever had jobs that appealed to my own interests. The one outlier really was working at a gas station, which I quit as a birthday present to myself. Yeah, this first job I had working mainly music in Messina, minimum wage was $5.50, and that's what I made. So I was making a grand total of like $50, $55 a week.
I remember those jobs too.
Well, yeah, and oddly, like it did pay enough for my gas, which it never would now. But the music store was opened by a retired police officer in the Messina police force who had like played drums as a kid, and for
Is this like a musical instrument store?
yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, not like a record
not
store.
a record store.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. And basically the reason that he hired me is because he didn't know anything about the instruments that he was stocking. Like he couldn't tune a guitar. He didn't
But
really.
could he tune a fish? Wow.
You killed it. No.
Thank you. There goes the vibe.
And so he actually like he entrusted me with a lot of like the products in the store, and like he would ask for my opinion on this guitar or that guitar, what I thought he should put in stock, and I would build the drum sets and do sales and all kinds of stuff.
It's really a perfect job for you.
Oh, absolutely a perfect job for me. And my parents, when I got into college, they were like, this job isn't paying you enough. You need to quit and find a different job. So I found that gas station job, Sugar Creek, which is now an Asian restaurant in Potsdam. And
that's yeah.
And I hated it so much that I quit 3 months in, like I said, as a birthday present to myself. The most miserable group of people I think I've ever met in my life at that Sugar Creek. I don't know if that's a requirement for the job. Maybe that's why I didn't fit in.
You know, since I moved back to Potsdam in 2019 after being away for, at that point, 20 years, I've been trying to figure out what used to be in that space that is now the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, it was a Sugar Creek, and right across the street where there is now Five Guys was a Stewart's.
Yes.
Yes, that was the Little Stewart's, and then the Big Stewart's opened, and then that one closed, and then we have another Little Stewart's that opened. Yeah. We need more Stewart's in Potsdam, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, because I lived right around the corner from both of those.
Oh, okay.
And would regularly walk to get ice cream when I was feeling especially like I needed exercise.
Yeah, I've basically only ever had jobs that appealed directly to my own interests, which is I'm incredibly fortunate in that way. That I'm really glad that when I was unemployed and I tried to get a job at Price Chopper that they never called me back. Well, they did. They wrote me an email a year later after I found gainful employment, and it was no longer useful to me.
Well, and now fortunately you're in the extremely lucrative field of public radio.
You say that as a joke.
Compared to, I realize this. My first full-time job actually was in local commercial radio.
Yeah.
And the starting salary was $12,100 a year.
My first salary job, I think they offered me $22,000 a year. And at the time they were selling it as, you'll get paid the same each week, even if you don't come in. And it was like, oh, that sounds awesome. And then I realized that I didn't make enough to pay for health insurance.
Yeah.
So what fun that was. And then I remember I had a conversation with one of the bosses, because there were like 3 or 4 GMs who came in my 5 years there. And they had fired somebody else at a neighboring station. And they asked me to do his job, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it, but I need more money." And he was like, "Well, you're spending more time at work." I was like, well, no, I'm still here for 8 hours, but I am doing another person's job. And he was like, well, I'll see what I can do, but I really don't know if I can pay you more if you're not staying here longer.
Well, is it an hourly job?
Man, it was ridiculous. Anyway, that's why I don't work in commercial radio anymore.
So the reason I brought any of this up
was
actually goes back to the times that I was interning on Capitol Hill, and I did not mention the third internship, which was actually on the House Science Committee, and the highlight of that was in my spare time, I was also an assistant coach on the Democratic Congressional Baseball team, which was totally cool.
That sounds a lot cooler than the rest of it.
Yeah, actually, because most of the rest of it, I was like compiling press clippings, basically, which was okay. I mean, it was not difficult and it was kind of interesting. But yeah, I really loved going, there has been no other set of circumstances under which I've enjoyed getting up to be someplace at 6:30 a.m. But these congressmen, when they needed to take batting practice and fielding practice and stuff, they could only do it really before their daily job on Capitol Hill started. So we would go to this school in someplace in Northwest D.C., and I would throw them batting practice or hit ground balls to them or whatever. But it was at 6:30 in the morning, and but it was great. It was
never do that
really
again.
Great.
I did that for many years.
So the reason I bring this up is that our interview today is with a playwright named Nina Kissinger.
No relation.
No relation. I do have a baseball story about Henry Kissinger that I'll share after this is over.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
However, she's a playwright. She lives in New York City. She's from the Bay Area, originally in California. But her play called This Is Government is making its world premiere at the Pendragon Theater at the end of August. And
is this in the renovated space or still in the old space?
Still in the old
space.
space.
Gotcha.
It's, in fact, the last play that will ever be put on in the old space.
Whoa, what a distinction. That's really cool.
Yeah. And then it goes on to be, she's taking it off-Broadway in New York City after that. So this is really both a world premiere and kind of a test run. And the play involves three sort of low-level staffers, 2 interns and a staffer on Capitol Hill who have regular contact with the constituents of this particular congressman for whom they work. She'll tell you more about the interview, but I had a chance to sit outside Pendragon Theater with Nina Kissinger. Thank you so much for making some time.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Let me ask a weird question to get us started. Why is this called This Is Government and not This Is Politics?
That's such a great question. I think of this play a lot as really an examination of how government functions versus how we think it does. This play is really based around interns answering phone calls in a congressional office, truly not the figureheads. Political party names are not used in this play. It's really about the literal functioning of government, of a system that we all rely on, and increasingly, I think now, realize the ways in which it informs so much of our life, including public radio. Yeah, but that's why.
Well, and these interns, it's 2 interns and a staffer who supervises the interns, but they're kind of cogs in the system.
100%. And I think so much of what I was thinking, I mean, while I interned on the Hill, A, but B, in writing this play is like the people who are servicing us so much of the time in government that we interface with are, the lowest level staffers. And often, when they're interacting with the public, it's at our worst moments, our lowest moments when we need help from the government. And I think thinking a lot about the people who are the figureheads of helping us of progress, of making change versus the people who actually are doing that work on the ground.
Well, and one of the things that occurred to me as I was reading the play is how it will be received in a place like Saranac Lake versus how it would be received in a place like Washington, D.C.
100%. It's a curiosity I have myself for sure. It's been interesting. The play's been workshopped and read a handful of times around the country, and it's always interesting to hear what different audiences laugh at in particular, but also what resonates everywhere. I think though, at its core, though I think in DC, obviously the resonance would be different for obvious reasons. I think across the country, people feel such a sense of just exhaustion and disengagement. And I think this play is hopefully energizing in a different way and commenting on, what we're all thinking about, but hopefully in a way that doesn't feel just like a collusion with non-productive conversation. Yeah.
Well, what was the catalyst for writing it?
So I interned on the Hill in summer of 2021, and it was a really interesting time to be on the Hill. It was a couple months after January 6th. The fences were still up around the Capitol. And COVID was still, I mean, not that it isn't now, but alive and well in terms of you could really tell political affiliation by whether someone was wearing a mask or not. And I was, many times in my internship, there were lockdowns, and
and by lockdowns, we're not talking about COVID lockdowns here.
No, that's a great clarification. No, different kinds of security alerts that would place us all in the office for a while. And most of my job while I was an intern was answering constituent calls. And many of the callers we had called many times a day, 6, 7, 8 times a day. And, I was really struck by the sense of familiarity and the care I had for the people who called. I'd recognize their number, pop up on the phone and go, oh my gosh, and then answer the phone. Also, while I was there, one of these lockdowns, and you might remember this, there was a big story in summer of 21, a white pickup truck pulled up outside the Capitol threatening to have a bomb, and the driver saying he wanted to speak to President Biden at the time. And I was really struck by the fact that many of the beliefs he was espousing were things that I heard from people on the phone all day and people I felt a great sense of care of. And kind of out of just thinking about all of this play was really born.
It is so interesting to think that while the people who are elected to represent these people, their constituents, the people that the constituents have the most contact with are generally 20-something interns.
Yes, and many times in my internship, I was struck by kind of the cruel irony of the fact that, we spoke to people in their lowest moments. A family member was being deported. They were being evicted. They had lost their health care. And the person on the other end of the phone was a 20-year-old with no life experience, sitting in an office where they know this is going into report. And not to say, the district staffs for these congressional offices do incredible work for their constituents, but it really struck me often, this can't be doing what it's meant to be doing. The fact that we're on the other end of these calls, where sometimes the most you could do is just stay on the phone with the person. I mean, there's just such an incredible injustice in the sense of, if you have the sense that government is meant to help the people it serves, that certainly didn't feel like the case.
Do you feel like you walked into the internship and then walked out with a different view of how things work?
100%. It was a great way for me to learn I didn't want to work in politics, which I'm sure is not the goal of the internship program on the Hill. But I did. It gave me such a different sense also of local politics and public radio and the reasons that local systems are so important. And this great sense of, I think, when you have these really idealistic notions, which I think is wonderful, that I certainly feel, and I think young people have generally, of any generation in any era, that, there's an altruistic sense of purpose, really getting inside, and not to say that people don't believe in that and don't want that, but when, you are a part of a system as a whole, and a system that doesn't always or often does not serve the best interests of its people in a lot of different ways and for a lot of different reasons, including political decision-making that has ramifications for people that they didn't expect and didn't necessarily vote for.
We should give people kind of a thumbnail sketch for what this play is about, and I feel like we actually kind of have, but really the play involves 2 interns and a supervisor who are in lockdown in their congressman's office, and the congressman is at the center of some controversy.
Indeed, yeah. So the congressman is actually loosely a little bit based on Senator Joe Manchin, if you could tell, former Senator Joe Manchin.
I was wondering if it was Joe Manchin or Susan Collins.
Totally. Honestly, could be either. But it's very much exactly as you said. These 2 interns and a staff are trapped in their office during the lockdown while the congressman is off voting on the Saving the Health of Americans Today Act, colloquially called the SHAT Act in the play, which unfortunately I wrote long before the big, beautiful bill and all of that was happening. But voting on a big healthcare bill that, reopen rural hospitals and protect healthcare for folks on, essentially Medicaid in the play. But the congressman has long been known in this play as a moderate who likes to make a big show of it, who does things for political reasons. But it really is about sort of the mystery that unfolds of this lockdown as the interns sort of discover why this is happening and what they can do about it and what their connection may be to it.
Yeah, we don't want to give away any spoilers because hopefully folks will come and see the play. But there is a person who is part of this play who, like the people you were describing, calls multiple times a day and kind of develops a relationship with the people on the, I forget exactly how she terms them, but the folks on the phone.
Yes, and that was the thing that struck me most leaving my internship was that, so much, I talked to our regular callers more than my friends or family that summer, and in the days, weeks, months, frankly, the years after this internship ended, I would find myself walking around wondering, like, how is this person doing? Did that ever work itself out? Because you really did gain a sense of care, and even though, as interns, you stick to a script, and your job is to get people off the phone, really, there was also, people would recognize you from your voice on the phone. And there was just kind of this bond that, at least for sure, I experienced in that sense of care. And what happens when that sense of care you experience for someone who often is maybe calling your office because they vehemently disagree with your politics or the politics of a rep you're working for, what does that mean in practice?
In the case of the woman in the play, she does make a distinction between the people on the phone and the person that she's trying to reach.
Yes, it was really interesting. I hate to, get into like real cliches about like partisanship and divisiveness, but it was really fascinating because I would say the way I was treated on the phone by many of these callers versus the way they'd speak about the rep or about, particular political positions was quite different. And I think there is something too, like when we lose the humanity behind a lot of beliefs and we lose the vision of just personhood, and that we, I think it can be challenging to say like we have more in common than not, but I do think there's this sense of, when we really forget that at the end of the day, it's like these are all people who have beliefs and reasons and stakes and everything. And it was a good reminder always of, I think for myself of reconciling how can I have such care for a person whose political beliefs I really abhor potentially, particularly, when I'm from San Francisco, I'm from the biggest liberal there is, and I love it there. But it was a really, I think, interesting confrontation for me to do with myself of how much do I understand people based on their political beliefs, and is that legitimate? Can we ascribe morality to political belief in this kind of ecosystem that is so polarizing?
And can you disagree with a person's political beliefs but still care if they got a good night's sleep?
Exactly, which I think, and I think actually something I really identify with my generation is the sense of to condone or accept or agree to disagree is to condone belief. And I wonder about that. I don't have an answer to that, but I think a lot about, if I really don't agree with someone, is engaging with them as a person, as a kind person in the world, hopefully, with one another, is that to condone a belief that has nothing to do with the interactions we are having? And I think, unfortunately, so much of what we're thinking right now is like, if I don't agree with someone, I cannot engage with them. And, maybe that's right, maybe that's wrong, I don't know, but it's something I'm spending a lot of time thinking about, I think, as a young person. Yeah.
It was interesting for me to think about the fact that I don't know exactly when you wrote this play, but how much different things must already seem today versus when you were putting metaphorical pen to paper.
Yeah, I perhaps in a great sense of optimism, when I was writing the play largely in 2022, I was like, I bet this is going to age out of relevance so fast. Fortunately, I guess for the play it hasn't, but unfortunately for our world, it's become more and more timely. It's been, the play really at its core is about healthcare and a healthcare bill. It's been really interesting to think about this play in light of the Big Beautiful Bill getting passed and, 12 million people likely losing their healthcare in a couple years. And sort of the broader context and conversation we're having around healthcare in America, also, the Luigi of it all, as I say, and otherwise. But no, it's been really fascinating to see how the play has changed and how, readings of it, audiences have responded to it differently as the political context has shifted over the past couple of years.
Well, yeah, its first showings in front of the, first complete productions will be in a place where rural healthcare is a real issue. 100%,
which also, I've been so fortunate and so lucky for this entire opportunity and to be in a town like this, which Saranac is so beautiful and welcoming and has been just the most incredible place to get to rehearse a play, obviously. But I think there's something really important and special that we talked a lot about in early rehearsals of the resonance that parts of this play will have here that won't necessarily be in New York and vice versa. But I think also, especially rural healthcare, it's not unlike public radio that serves rural communities. But I think we forget, especially perhaps in cities, that, the things that are getting passed right now affect people's daily life. It's not just if you lose your health care, right? It's if the rural hospital near you can no longer operate because its funding margins are gone. These are really substantive issues that impact everyone, even if you don't think they might impact you.
one of the things that really hit me as I was reading this was that commonality with public radio. And just to bend your ear for a second, I in the wake of the public radio funding loss, the elimination of funding for the CPB, I did an interview with Scott Simon on Weekend Edition, which was its own kind of strange out-of-body experience for me, having, listened to him for 40 years or whatever. And in the wake, but that interview itself wasn't the point. The point was, after that interview aired around the country, I got a bunch of letters from various people who, essentially said, how could I be surprised that NPR was being targeted because of X, Y, and Z? And I wrote back to every single one of those people, and every single one of those people wrote to me to say how surprised they were that I took the time to read their email and write back to them. And it felt a lot like the interaction that your character has regularly with interns, and it struck me that the people that wrote probably expected that there would be somebody who was far distant from me who would read their email and either not do anything with it or respond in a cursory way. And I guess I don't even know where this question is going, but it struck a kind of big general nerve, maybe, that like one of the things that might be missing from where we are today in society is an ability to just hear each other.
100%. No, that's so interesting to think about also from the perspective of, because also as a longtime Scott Simon listener, which how cool is that? But, we think, I think, in also national terms of like that everything happens at the national level. And then we have very little expectations, even though the most important services any of us engage with are local, right? And like local journalism, local healthcare, all that stuff happening at the local level. And I do think people have a fundamental shock. I mean, I felt kind of shocked working the phones at this internship of like, oh yeah, there are people actually in this office even who do talk to people all day, because I think we've come to expect also such a level of that, like anyone who disagrees with us will not engage with us, or certainly won't engage in a kind way. And I think, unfortunately, that's often true in settings that are amplified, the settings we see on the news, what our algorithms show us. But I do think, it's been really interesting, particularly with this play. Many people of different political affiliations have come, and I've had incredible interactions with people talking about the play, talking about kind of the state of the world. And I do think there is a lot that binds us around real moral concern and mutual concern over the moment we're in. And I do think, especially I do identify as a part of Gen Z in this play. I feel, is representative of that perspective in a lot of ways. But I think with Gen Z in particular, a generation that really came up in a time of political divisiveness that we're not responsible for, but are really important to the repair of. I worry even more about, the sort of social media effect of it all, and the like polarity and the effect of kind of like, no, I just won't engage with another perspective, or I can be in my silo and have my community in my silo. And, I think that can be amazing. And I also think, we're not reaping the benefits of what it means to engage with each other and identify as a community of humans first and foremost, as kind of cliche as I think that can sound.
So as the playwright, and you said you've had some staged readings in places, but this will be the first time that it's performed. What is it like to see the thing that you wrote come alive in kind of a 3D way?
It's crazy. I mean, it's crazy on so many levels. It's crazy, especially in the sense of, the theater I'm doing right now in New York, beyond when I've been super lucky to have this play workshop at other theaters. But again, not in a production sense, is scrappy. We're figuring out a table here or whatever, folding whatever there. So, I mean, frankly, even walking in and just seeing the set, like a built set, I was like freaking out, texting everyone I know, like, look at this, it's crazy. But so there's like certainly just a surreal aspect of seeing it quite literally just materialized, and seeing, what an incredible theater like Pendragon and New Light collectively are able to do to bring a play to life has been so surreal and amazing, just from like a research perspective. But then also I think it's so incredible to see these characters and this world and this story, what a production brings to a play is so incredible. Like no stage reading, nothing can capture to that extent. When you have, the change of sneakers under the desk because they're in their work shoes, and they walk, that kind of attention to detail in a world deepens the story, allows so much more character work to happen when you have, just the most incredible actors connecting with each other, bringing all this comedy and wonder just to this world. It's really incredible because truly, I'm very proud of any of the readings that have been done of this play, but there's nothing like truly the world on a page getting put into motion. And I think it's true for most playwrights, or I think most great playwrights, but that you write so you can collaborate, you don't collaborate so you can write. So all of the writing is all in favor of hopefully getting to the room where all these brilliant artists bring all these brilliant ideas to make your play, your world that you've created actually real and actually vivid. And so that's been like the greatest gift, but it's very surreal. And I continuously am like, none of this, because we're sort of in the most beautiful place in the world. So I'm just sort of walking around like, it's just a dream. Like it's been incredible.
Do you have to feel comfortable enough to kind of give away some of your artistic freedom to the director? Is there a point where you have to say, okay, I've set these characters in motion and now you have to interpret them for me?
100%. And that's been such an interesting part of this process is, so much of theater is collaboration and is everybody kind of bringing different ideas and perspectives. And, it's really interesting what people read in your work is not always what you read in your work, which is like a crazy thing because also we all want to be like, no, I would know if that was there, right? But it's, I think it's that whole process of kind of giving over control is, incredible by the fact of a play actually getting to live the way a play is meant to live. But B, when you're working with really incredible collaborators, which is certainly the case here, that you have incredible trust and an excitement for, and you just watch as people, explode your work in a way where you're like, oh my God, I wish I'd thought of that. I wish I'd thought of that. And I'm so glad somebody else did. And I think there's such a, theater is one of those art forms that is so based in community, both from an audience perspective and from a process perspective, that, as the play progresses, as we rehearse, everyone, is taking equal ownership of the work. And there's a great beauty in that, too, of, we rise as a team, we fall as a team, right? Like it's, everybody's vision and brilliance is hopefully in the work and in this production in a way that, an audience will get to just see and rejoice in.
What has to happen in Saranac Lake to make it work even better in New York City?
An audience would be super good. Come to the show. I think, our time up here is such a gift, too, ahead of a New York City kind of transfer, in the sense, too, of actors getting to perform in a community that so supports and is such an incredible audience and patrons of Pendragon Theater. It was so fascinating to me to hear all about the new space opening, because especially in our Lord's Year 2025, a theater having the support and the love of a community to be opening a new space, expanding instead of contracting, is incredible. And so I think it speaks so much to what the community feels for art here and the value placed in that. And so in part, I'm incredibly excited for these actors to have an audience who's really excited about this theater and hopefully the play as well. But to support and to be there in the spaces in the first performances, I'm really, really excited that the first real audience of a production of this play is up here. And also, I think logistically, literally in terms of the transfer, it's a comedy. And so, a dark comedy, but a comedy. And it's incredible for actors to have a chance with an audience who's known to the theater and to this theater to laugh and to learn where are they pausing, where are they stop, all that kind of stuff, and to really get comfortable and get all the excitement of those first performances, so that kind of when they're looking to the next many-week run in the city, that there's been all this magic and all this excitement cultivated here in a place that I think is community-based in a different way than the run in New York will be. So I think that's really what I'm excited for between the two.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can Gen Z save the world?
Oh my God, I hope so. I don't know. I can't, but I hope collectively some of us could. I don't know. I think so much of Gen Z is, which also I think every generation feels this way. It was interesting. This play was read at this amazing theater, the B Street Theater in Sacramento. And the audience was, certainly, there were 200 people in the audience. Everyone was over the age of, I would say, 65. And it was one of the best audiences ever. It was incredible. And I was struck by how many people said, this is just like me. I see myself in this at, 20, 21. And so I think so much because in such a, self-centered Gen Z way, of course, but like identify the generation as, the young people can save the world and everyone's like, you guys will do it, don't worry. And I think it's so interesting actually how resonant that is with so many age groups to these early years. But I do think I'm really excited by certain things. I think we just had the mayoral primary in New York, and that was a very exciting, I think, turn of the tides in some way of seeing Gen Z engagement and what young people are excited about. And I do love, I think, Gen Z, for better for worse, is shaking some things up and sort of showing up in spaces differently. Like we're wearing sneakers to work. I don't know, doing some other things. And I am really excited about kind of the potential. That being said, I think, with Gen Z, there can be a disconnect of engagement just because we're, it's an online generation. And what is the gap between that kind of activism versus real on the ground engagement, the kind of local work that's in radio or in healthcare, all that kind of stuff that we need. And so I do have a lot of excitement and hope for kind of a Gen Z view of the world. And I'm excited, and a lot of this plays about, okay, and how do we take that idealism or in that excitement and that optimism about what we can become and put it into practice on the ground. That's something I'm thinking a lot about in my own life right now, too.
As a Gen Xer, I feel like my generation is at the point where we're just sighing heavily about everything. So I'm grateful for Gen Z.
Yeah, you guys. I think it's the sighing era has entered, and I think that's earned. Yeah.
Nina Kissinger, thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
Nina Kissinger is the playwright behind This Is Government, which makes its world premiere at Pendragon Theater in Saranac Lake and then goes on to Off-Broadway in New York City. You can find more information from a link at ncpr.org/northwards.
Okay, you promised a baseball story about Henry Kissinger?
Yeah, okay, well, so for those of you who didn't tune in earlier in the podcast,
because that's how it works.
Maybe you're just joining us. Maybe you surfed over to this page and you clicked 28 minutes into the interview.
I'm a big fan of Northwards, but I only like the outro and the credits. The interviews, I don't know.
So I played baseball in college, and my senior year of college, we had a freshman on the team whose name was Jason Kissinger.
Okay.
But of course, it's a baseball team, and it's a college baseball team at that, so we nicknamed him Henry.
Okay, yeah, of course.
And after a while, nobody even really remembered his last name. We just referred to him as Henry. And that is the entire story.
Oh, not actually Henry
No,
Kissinger.
Henry Kissinger. Yeah, it would have been great if Henry Kissinger had shown up at a Cornell College baseball game in 1992. But as far as I know, Henry Kissinger was not familiar with this little college in Iowa, nor was he a baseball fan, at least at the Division III level.
What do you think Henry Kissinger's baseball batting average would have been? Pretty good? Pretty bad? Other things on his mind?
Good question. Yeah, a lot of things on his mind. I would see him as just above the Mendoza line, which you can look up later.
I will.
Ethan Shanty, who produces this show and why?
Northwards is an NCPR podcast production. The show is written, produced, and edited by Mitch Tyke. Digital production supervision is by me. I'm Ethan Shanty. Bill Hanel is our digital director. Doyle Dean is our production manager. And Caitlin Kelly handles our social media. To hear more conversations and support the show, visit ncpr.org/northwards. This is NCPR North Country Public Radio. Swing and a miss.